Dr. David Talcott, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to join you.
Yeah, real pleasure. You've done quite a bit of research and work around Plato. Are we ever going to get another Plato?
Well, no, because you can't get a first again,
Yes.
right? So can we get another George Washington? Yes and no, right? Like
Right.
there's never going to be another George Washington because you can't roll back time to the 1700s and, have there not be a nation and then make a nation. Like you're never going to do that again. Just like you can never come up with philosophy out of nothing again. So you can't have that again. Could we have a great intellect like Plato? Yeah, sure. We could have a great one again, and we'll probably have some crisis moments in the West where we need a thinker like that again.
It just seems that Plato's influence on philosophy and on Western thinking has been somewhat unmatched.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and you're not going to replicate that again because you can't redo the foundations, right? Once the foundations are poured,
True.
You can't relay it. Yeah. So unless there were to be some new thing that starts that ends up being just as big as the whole history of Western philosophy.
Yeah.
At that level, we're not going to replace him because you're absolutely right. Plato is foundational to Western philosophical thinking, and outside of Scripture, which is the most foundational thing for Western civilization, there's a strong case Plato is the next most important figure. So I didn't realize how important he was when I started working on him seriously many years ago. But as I've continued studying, it's that's borne itself out and proved to be true.
What have you found?
Well, how much time do we have?
An hour and a half.
The place to start really is that sort of foundational idea. There's a very famous quote from Alfred North Whitehead that the safest general characterization of the Western philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. And
Cleverly put.
Yeah, so a footnote means there's already a main text, right? And so then you sort of comment on the text.
Yeah.
And so the general point of that's fair is that Plato raises a lot of the issues for the first time in a way that's recognizable to us.
Yeah.
Philosophically. So it's the breadth of the thing that might be one of the most astonishing parts of it.
Right.
Whether you're doing ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, philosophy of science, politics, literature, thinking about the way that language is working, how like words refer to things and all this sort of business, and thinking deals with words and objects and all this kind of stuff. Very basic, like linguistics even. You could trace, you can see all that like emerging in Plato. And he raises those questions, gives preliminary answers that we don't always agree with, but like prove to be one of the more enduring, answers that you can give.
Right. Has there been before, was there before Plato, someone who was thinking, because you mentioned it's the first time it's recognizable to us.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's something that came before it.
Yeah, there absolutely is. So there's a whole history of philosophy prior to Plato. It's short, but it's real. And, when you start studying history, you realize nothing emerges out of nothing. Okay, so only creation in Genesis 1 emerges out of nothing. That emerges out of nothing. Everything else has a history.
Yeah.
Like everything else came from something. That's true for philosophy as well. And so it's true for Plato as well, who's writing in the high 300s BC. He's in he's post-Peloponnesian Wars. So if you've read Thucydides, Herodotus, some of those classical Greek historians, he's after that. And importantly, he's after, a number of other movements as well. There's a whole series of philosophers from 585 BC down to the 300s, typically called the pre-Socratic philosophers, followed by Socrates, hence pre-Socratic Socrates. And they engage in some philosophical inquiry as well. They don't put it all together the way that Plato does, but there's a lot of the pieces that start developing. They have a history too. What they're doing comes out of the mathematical reasoning and astronomical reasoning and observations and experimentation that we see in Babylon and we see in Egypt. So the ancient Near East civilizations, which were doing all kinds of stuff way before 585 BC, just sort of where you date the beginning of Western philosophy to, with a figure named Thales,
Mm-hmm.
who famously in that year predicted an eclipse, and so it gets recorded and all this stuff. Um, but he has a history, and he had learning that he gained from Egypt in particular. There's testimony. And, we have a whole record, obviously, of the Jews going back well before the 500s BC,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the Egyptians, Babylonians, Assyrians. And they're not doing the stuff that Plato and later thinkers are going to do philosophically,
Yeah.
but they're thinking, they're observing, and they're trying to understand the world in a very basic way. And there is something kind of, the old-fashioned way to put it is the Greek miracle. That's way out of fashion at this point, even for me. But there is something remarkable that happens kind of in the 400s BC in the West,
Hmm.
where a lot of different things come together and just pop. It's like a Cambrian explosion of
Yeah.
of the mind, of the soul, that is clearly there. And Plato's kind of the inheritor of all that. And he
Yeah.
puts it all together.
What was that explosion? Because there's all this leading up to it, and it sounds like,
Yeah.
interestingly, some of it was mathematical,
Definitely, yeah.
which is, I don't know that I would have seen that coming, but that makes sense. If you're trying to figure out the universe, you're also trying to figure out yourself.
Trying to figure out the universe, figure out yourself, try to do it systematically, logically, rationally.
Yeah.
And it turns out, and we still see this today, that mathematics describes the way the world functions in an astonishing way.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they realized this really early with geometry, using geometry to help with building projects, right? And to survey and to set up your farms and buildings and so on. So we've been using geometry for a long time. There's plenty of geometry that survives from ancient Egypt that they were using. You can just look at the incredible achievements architecturally that they achieved with the Great Pyramids. Obvious
Mhm.
example, like the geometry involved in that's pretty stunning. They never take it. What's different about the Greeks is they take it and then try to apply it more systematically to explaining how the universe functions. So the Egyptians are really good at building these things, but they never say, here's how number describes everything. Everything can be described mathematically. And the Greeks start doing that. Famously, Pythagoras does this in a really profound way, saying that the universe is a harmony of numbers. And he does it looking at music.
Right.
The musical intervals,
Yeah.
harmonies, the different tones that are measurable mathematically, and the way that different pitches relate to each other in ratios. He really discovers all that, and it's astonishing, and starts putting it together. But you go from there, and Plato thinks math's quite important. And it's soon after Plato that you get Euclid and his work in geometry that came out of this whole Greek tradition, and really trying to set up. Well, so you have this empirical success of math, helping to understand music, and then you also realize that you can organize math so rigorously.
Mhm.
It's so hardcore, right?
Predictable.
It's predictable, it's rigorous, and it's deductively a system,
Yeah.
right? So that you can get 2 + 2 = 4, 4 + 4 = 8, and it's like perfect.
Right.
It's just perfect. And you can demonstrate it, like you can give the steps.
Yeah.
And so it becomes from the ancient Greek world forward, mathematics, geometry and arithmetic become the models for intellectual work. I mean, they are the models of what comes to be called sciences in
Mhm.
Latin. They are model examples of how you can rigorously organize knowledge to a systematic body with basic principles, things deduced from them. And so there's a lot of reasons actually math ends up really important intellectually in the West, and not just practically. It's obviously practically important too.
Yeah.
And Plato's right in the thick of it. He has a lot to say about math. He famously gives pride of place to math in the way I just described, but also in the educational system,
Mhm.
the importance of mathematics education for forming the mind, forming the soul, both intellectually and even ethically, he would say. So yeah, I mean, we could go on a
Yeah.
long time there. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting that they also tied this to music, and no
Yeah.
doubt that kind of informed their view about the entirety of life. That life was somewhat
Hmm.
cold and mathematical and logical and very hard with tough edges.
Maybe. I was with you on the first half
Okay.
till you started saying it was cold, and then I got a little concerned because, yeah, it's describable mathematically, but is harmony cold? I mean, when you think of harmony, do you think, oh man,
No.
that's cold,
Yeah.
that's dry, that's sort of like
Yeah.
not really. Think of the opposite, right? Like
Right.
it's living, like it's humming,
Yes.
And so the order and rationality that the Greeks have is one that's humming, right? It's
And was that
alive.
true of math as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
I,
Did it look different than our current math now?
well, did it look different?
Or at
Okay.
least did they think about it differently?
Well, I mean, Plato did in part. I mean, it still has, you still do like, solve problems, you still do proofs and
Right.
demonstrations. You would still do that. But what I wanted to challenge is whether they reduced everything to just like a dry version of that. That's like, that's sort of the part of music where you're doing the music theory,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're doing the music analysis. Like, okay, this is a fifth, this is a fourth, this is an octave, it's a 2-to-1 ratio. It's like, yeah, that's a key part of it. That helps you sort of see what's going on,
Right.
but you sing it, right? Or you play it. And it's not just a number, it's a number that's alive. So
Right.
at least in Plato, and to focus on that part of it, for Plato, the universe isn't just numbers, right? They're numbers that are alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just the rationality that's there. The rationality is there that's guiding, that's leading, that's directing, that's governing. But everything else is real and everything else is coming along and it's alive. And so it's not just the head, it's also the heart. It's not just the mind, it's also the passions. The mind is leading, but everything else is, caught up into it, is pulled along into it.
And so, would they have tied the study of mathematics to the real world in a much? It sounds like they're tying it in a better way than we do now. Where right now we do a lot of music theory, and when you translate that over to math
Yeah.
theory, as opposed to how does math look?
Yeah. Well, who's the we there? I think in the broader culture, it's not like people study music theory anymore.
No, it's not.
They just sort of listen to music and, float along.
Yeah.
So I actually think they could use a little more music theory in their life. And most
Yes.
people could use a lot more order than they
Yes.
have, right? They float along kind of
Yeah.
confusedly in a muddle. So I think they actually need more of it. But I think, to go back to the math for a second, I teach philosophy to college students. I'm not like an elementary math educator.
Right.
But if you were asking for my hot take would be, yeah, we typically teach math in a very dry way where it's just like memorize these things and crunch these numbers. And we don't see it as connected to life in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And not just connected to life like, hey, you're going to have to pay your bills someday. You should probably figure out how to add 3-digit numbers.
Right.
Okay, obviously you need that. But we don't teach it as you should understand that the world is beautiful.
Yes.
You should understand that the world is orderly and harmonious and that you have a role to play in that, in fitting in with it and in making it be orderly and harmonious to the greatest extent that you can.
Yeah.
And so we disconnect math from aesthetic concepts like beauty, moral concepts like order and justice. And Plato himself saw those all as pretty tightly connected. To the point that he says, you guys are such wicked people because you'd never studied geometry.
Personally.
And like, that doesn't make sense to us.
Right. Yes.
Like, I don't know, geometry never made me any better.
Right.
Right. And that's because we studied it just like, here's how you deduce certain things from other things, instead of saying, let's look at how things fit together in nature.
Right.
Let's look at how things fit together in a way that's proper.
Yeah.
In a way that is orderly and harmonious.
Right.
And something like order, harmony, those kind of cross the boundaries between the quantitative and the qualitative. That's another way we talk these days. And they're pulled together in the picture there. So Anyway, all that to say, I think the Greeks have a kind of combination of this stuff going on. There's a kind of literary trope for this, actually, that the Greeks are a combination of both Apollo and Dionysus,
Hmm.
right? Apollo being kind of the rational one, and
Yeah.
Dionysus being the wild and crazy one,
Right.
the passions. So they have both the head and the heart going.
Interesting. How did we lose that?
Again, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
That's it's very hard to hold them in correct. We would say something like balance. It's very hard to have them together correctly.
Yeah.
It's like walking on a balance beam. It's hard to stay in the middle.
Yeah.
And so different cultures, different individuals tend to, err in some way or another. And sin, of course, drives us to err in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a long story to that. In more recent modernity, there's examples of excessive rationalism that's
Mm-hmm.
cold and calculating.
Yep.
I would put communism in that category as a kind of purely rationalistic system of trying to impose theoretical order onto a wild and woolly world. So there's that. At the same time, that emerges in the 1800s, you have crazy romanticism in the 1800s that sees the world as just a completely kind of passionate, chaotic place that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have any rational order structuring it at all. And there's literary versions of that. I would say, Nietzsche would be an example of a philosophical version of that, although he would say he has reason and order. We can argue about it, but in my view, he's clearly on the Dionysus side and not on the Apollo side of this kind of thing. And those are both happening in the late 1800s, and
Yeah.
they're still happening today. And so you see kind of all of this stuff get out of whack, right? It's like when you've got a gyroscope spinning, it holds steady, and then when it stops, it could fling in any direction.
Right.
And this stuff can fling in a lot of directions. So if we honed in on one time or place, or we could talk about certain things. But I think there's various movements that fling it all over the place. If there's a linchpin to it in modernity, it's the loss of Christian faith.
Hmm.
It's Christianity and Christ that helps us keep these things in balance historically, right? I mean, Greek pagan philosophy lasts 600 years, and then Christianity absorbs it. We take it over, and then it lives happily, subordinated to Christ, with Christ, under Christ, part of our natural dominion over the earth. That's where it stays steady.
Yeah.
Is when it's governed by Jesus. And so I think you can broadly track the emergence, the loss of this balance and harmony to the loss of faith.
Interesting.
And when you lose faith, that's when something starts going out of whack
Mm-hmm.
with nature. It turns out if you lose grace, you also end up losing nature
Mm-hmm.
in the deal as well, typically.
That's interesting because at the same time, the Greeks, when they were building this philosophical system, they were by no means Christian,
No.
very pagan society.
Yep.
And yet they seem to come to the correct harmony between
Yeah.
the order and the chaos, the woolliness.
Yeah. We're cherry picking a little by choosing Plato, who's a really good example, perhaps the best of the Greeks.
Yeah.
That's a debatable point. Better than most of the rest. Greek culture, he's actually a critic of Greek culture because he thinks the Greeks are getting things wrong. So he represents kind of an example of about as good as you can do just by nature from the past. And they had other problems in antiquity, a little bit different than ours. So I don't want to oversell it, but more of a cultural accomplishment than a full or Christian accomplishment, certainly, because this is happening several hundred years before Christ.
Yeah.
Plato himself and all the Greek stuff for the most part. And independent of Judaism as well, as far as we can tell, although this is something that's debated by scholars, and there's testimonia ranging, all the way from the 1st century BC down to the Reformation and beyond that, oh no, Plato went and studied in Egypt. And when he was there, he met a bunch of Hellenistic Jews, and he read the Torah, and he was impressed and influenced by it. And so, there's a lot of Jewish undertones in Plato's thinking. This is a view that goes back to Philo of Alexandria in the 1st century BC, Justin Martyr, 150 years later, maybe the first Christian apologist, makes the same claim. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think you need the evidence for that. I don't think the evidence is there. You don't need it to explain it. But that's a long-standing story in the West that Plato's so good he must have seen it in Moses.
Right.
And yeah, again, I don't think so. It's just natural revelation, I think.
Yeah.
If he read anything, he might have read Proverbs. There's like Proverbs might be the most Platonist of the Old Testament books. Just like that just sort of like practical wisdom about here's how things work. Like character first. I
feel like he probably could have also gone through Ecclesiastes. Sometimes I think of him as a little ecclesiastical.
Could be. I would buy that more than reading Moses.
Yeah.
Personally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating that like all of these things came together in Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and there were others there, obviously. But you know, that isn't. I would imagine it's not something that the world had seen before, outside of it, you know, in a pagan society.
Which part?
The kind of the depth and correctness of a lot of their understanding.
Yeah, I think intellectually what happens in the 400s in Greece, BC, doesn't really have precedent before it in human history. Maybe there's some scholar of the ancient Near East that you can bring on next week and he can correct my understanding. I don't see there's just nothing comparable to like Plato's Republic.
Yeah.
That exists, you know, in 800 BC, something like that. I mean, the closest thing is the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. But you look at older stuff that survives, it's like Epic of Gilgamesh. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same at all. And that's not a knock on it. It's just, it's part of God's providential plan for history. Like, God's moving history toward an end, and he intended for us to take dominion over the earth, and we're doing that in fits and starts, but we're doing it. So, like, we can do stuff now they couldn't do then, right? We're recording podcasts on microphones and things that are inconceivable even like 200 years ago, let alone 2000.
Right.
So we can do all kinds of things they couldn't do before. No knock on them. They're obviously in most ways smarter than us because they had to rely on their own two hands and their own minds in ways that we now have these tools that we use that make us soft in various ways. So it's no knock on them, but it's just part of history, right? And in another 1,000 years or however long it is, probably in another 2 generations, they're going to be able to do stuff that like, well, never even heard of that thing. How are you an expert on that?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that existed. And now my grandson like knows everything about it. So that's just going to be part of how things go. And, so it's no knock on 1200 BC that they couldn't produce something like Plato's Republic or Newton's laws of physics or anything. It's just, it takes time to work this stuff out. And God made a world that is very hard to understand with the plan that it would take us a very long time to understand it. Yeah. And it's a civilizational project that we're just like joining midstream. And so, yeah, I think it's a remarkable, really a remarkable achievement at a lot of levels. They're still pagans. I don't want to like, I don't want to like oversell it. They're still pagans. They have a lot of deficiencies. Their sexual ethics are still bad and things like that. But yeah, still an achievement.
It's I do wonder like what was it about that time or that atmosphere or something that created, you know, that brought about that conclusion.
Yeah. Historical question. I don't know what can even be said about that. You can point to things. You can point to, well, you know, math had gotten to a certain point, astronomy had gotten to a certain point, commerce and trade had gotten to a certain point. You know, you can look at Greece's particular geographic location, which is interestingly significant for trading purposes. If you're going to trade between Egypt and Israel and the Black Sea, you're going to go right by the western coast of Turkey, which is where a lot of these things started, the Greek-speaking peoples in the Eastern Aegean. Okay, so it's like a city where a lot of people mix from a lot of different cultures.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that's happening other places too, and they don't produce a Socrates. So I don't know. I think there is a kind of irreducible contingency to history. You know, like, why are you the person that you are? And it's like, well, you can point to your dad and point to your grandpa and point to this and that. But like at the end of the day, you're unique. Like you couldn't have just put those in and like brought you out as a like solution to a math problem.
Right.
It's not it's not that simple. And I think it's the same way in history. There's just an irreducible contingency that no, it didn't have to happen there. It didn't have to happen that way. But in God's providence and through the exercise of the will of man, right? The decisions of man, the choices that they made at that time and the work that they did, that's what they made themselves into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question comes from a place of like, it would be wonderful to kind of be able to recreate or do something similar. Obviously, you can't
Yeah.
perfectly recreate it, but the leaps and bounds made there, I feel like, would be
Yeah.
wonderful to have now.
Yeah. I think our aim of classical education, holistic education, right, broad education, where you learn about lots of different things, is going to be the part of the soil that's going to produce something like this again. Because if you don't have some kind of view of the whole, you're not going to ever produce something like this again. So there's a lot of pieces to it. I'd say classical education's got to be part of it. Christian faith, if there's going to be a West, in the future, it's going to be Christian faith reviving as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two things, that I would encourage people to double down on. The classical ed without the Christian faith, not so good. The Christian faith without the classical, broad liberal arts and humanities background, likely to be impotent.
Yeah. As far as what Plato actually believed, and how those beliefs have impacted the West and kind of built our not more is it moral framework that he's built? It feels like something that came from the Bible, but a lot of the ways in which we think about problems and solving problems came from Plato.
Yeah, I mean the Bible is the most important frame by far.
Yeah.
In the West, for every part of knowledge and practice, it's Christian first. But within that broader framework, there's other technical abilities now, right? Like engineering is a technical ability. Mathematics, that's an intellectual ability. That's where Plato really shines, is like in those abilities and all the different parts of human life, human experience, and creation that he analyzed and brought together. So it's difficult to answer that briefly because, as I mentioned, the breadth of it means we could talk about any particular area and probably say something about it. In metaphysics, just for example, the contrast between the material and the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
We have obviously a version of that going back to Genesis 1 in Scripture, that you have God creating man out of dirt and then breathing life into him. So you have that, in man from the very beginning. Animals have life and breath as well. But trying to analyze creation and to say what is creation like at a basic metaphysical level. Obviously, it's creation, and that's the most important thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what did God create? And that's where there's a lot of stuff that he does that's really helpful there. So just distinguishing between matter and form, for example, that there's material stuff that things are made out of, and then there's different forms that are imposed upon them, and that those forms are not merely reducible to the matter.
Mm-hmm.
We're made out of flesh and blood, but there's other living things made out of the flesh and blood, right? And it's the same kind of cells that other things are made out of as well. It's just the way that we are organized as human beings, that the flesh and blood and bones and skin is in a human, in a human, not in a dog or in a fish or other things. Fish don't have all those things. Big mammals are better examples. So you can have the same matter in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And the nature of that form dictates a lot of the attributes of that thing, right? When the matter comes to be part of us, it can think, it can run, it can do all these things that as a dog it couldn't do. So form is an irreducible part of creation, that God creates not only materiality, but these forms as well, and puts the forms into the matter. So just like in metaphysics, that basic duality that's there, which I know some biblical scholars think is a bad duality. We could debate that if we want, another podcast or maybe this podcast. But that's one example from form and matter. Across the board, analyzing knowledge in terms of a true belief that has an account of the reason why it's true, trying to study causation and to say, what is it that really necessitates something happening naturally as a result of something else? What causes something to happen and thinking about that in a systematic way, not just that thing bumped to that thing, but fire is the kind of thing that is hot. Things that are hot are the kind of things that do this, and therefore you can see law-like regularities. So trying to subsume natural events under law-like regularities, which we obviously do now if you think there's things like
Right.
gravity and so forth. So subsuming them into law-like regularities with kinds of things that have certain natures or essences that operate in this law-like regular fashion, metaphysics and science, and the list goes on. You could do that with ethics. We could do that with philosophy of math. We could do it with politics, rhetoric, poetics. He worked on all these things, and then Aristotle comes along behind and systematizes it all. But
yeah, it does feel like we've kind of lost many of the things that Plato was fighting for. And that's contributing to the lack of intellectual rigor.
Yeah. So one of the things I do in my book on Plato,
wonderful,
which I don't think we've mentioned that, but Plato and the Great Thinkers series,
he's got a book
from P&R Publishing. One of the things I do in here is talk about how I think Plato is actually extremely relevant to our current moment. That he's a kind of a person we can be a co-belligerent with. Right? It's something we talk about in politics, right? Like get the Christians, get the Mormons, get the reasonable atheists together and pass a law that bans transgender surgeries for minors, right? Like get the groups together and get that done.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we agree on everything. Doesn't mean we think we're all right about everything, but like there's a practical thing to do that we should get together on and fight. And Plato, I think, is a kind of intellectual co-belligerent today. He has so many of the right enemies, and he has so many arguments on their own terms, kind of on natural grounds, on created order, creational grounds, as to what's wrong with all these problems out there. And so one of the things I try to go through is in my book is go through these different areas and lay out how I think Plato can be a co-belligerent. In the issue we just brought up a minute ago on metaphysics, he attacks materialism, right? The view that, no, all that exists is matter. If you understand the principles of matter, that's all there is to understand about how the universe operates, right? And so he and then Aristotle after him and others develop arguments like, no, just look at what's out there, use your powers of observation and thought, and realize that can't be just materiality.
Yeah.
There's something else there, and there's a range of arguments to go through there. So he argues against materialism. He argues against relativism. He argues against hedonism, the idea that pleasure is the only intrinsic good. He argues against selfishness in politics, that you should just get as much as you can for your group instead of pursue what's actually good for the whole country, the whole nation, the whole people. And he's against atheism. He believes in a providential God.
Interesting.
Who is wholly good. So he has so many of the right enemies, both metaphysically and then epistemologically, ethically, politically.
Yeah.
And it's helpful to see that there's pagans that see that too.
Yeah.
Christians aren't the crazy ones on that. Like, no, you're understanding the world correctly. Wise pagans from different places have also seen it the same way. And they had really good reasons that the other pagans should listen to as well as listening to scripture, which they should also do.
Yeah. Did he come to the conclusion, did he come to any of the conclusions that would lead him to the triune God of the Bible?
Well, we didn't get a chance to see that in history, right? Because he passed in 349 BC and, the incarnation hadn't happened. And so there was no gospel being preached to the nations. So that's a historical, who knows kind of thing. What I will say is that the history of Platonism is that it becomes Christian.
Interesting.
It has to die or become Christian, just like other intellectual movements in the West. And some of them just pass away until they're reborn in modernity, but others get brought into Christianity, and Platonism is one of those things that gets brought into Christianity. If you read Augustine, for example, in the Confessions in the City of God, in both of those works, he has places where he discusses at some length how reading the Platonists helped him with certain issues.
Yeah.
Deal with these views of evil and matter, and so forth, and to think about the ascent of the soul up to God. Um, and so, in Augustine's own conversion, Platonism played a role in bringing him from a really bad place to like, okay, a little more, away from that.
Yeah.
And then in the historical process to be more ready for conversion.
Hmm.
So that's what happened to Augustine. Um, when you look at someone like Boethius, who I'm teaching right now in my course at New St. Andrews for the juniors at the college, we're reading Boethius right now. He's another Christian that's also very well educated in the pagan West, and he does the same thing. I mean, he looks at the way that Plato fought materialism, fought a kind of reduction of human happiness to just the here and now, and forces us to think about, no, there's higher things than just the matter. There's higher things metaphysically, higher things ethically, higher things spiritually. There's a divine realm. There's greatness. There's glory. There is beauty and nobility that is to be striven for. And that if you are living beautifully and nobly, you are living a happy and good life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, Boethius, if you just got thrown in jail unjustly, if you're about to be executed, that doesn't matter because you are actually still living a good and happy life because you have everything that makes for real human happiness. So that kind of pushing that way. So I would say we don't know what Plato would have done, but we do know what happened to Platonism, and that is became Christian.
It feels a very natural lead-in to Christianity.
Yeah, it in some ways it is. It weans you off of certain things. I think it can be intellectually preparatory.
Yes.
There's always the danger you could get stuck in it, and so anything created can be an idol, and any view of the world that ends up not getting to Christ, will turn into idolatry. So it's I'm not saying there's no danger. I don't want to oversell it, but
Yeah.
just historically, that's the way it went. Like, Epicureanism, that just needs to die. That's just materialism. That just needs to go. And, Zeus, sorry, man, you're done. Like Jupiter, there's no place for you here.
Yeah.
But, pursuing what is good and true and beautiful instead of the merely vain and fleeting and material and monetary and so on. Okay, that we can work with.
Yeah.
That we can work with.
Yeah.
And they needed to see that takes you to Jesus. And that's what the Greeks hadn't seen. So,
did Greek culture readily assimilate into Christianity? Because given what Plato had laid as a foundation.
Okay, now you're really asking me a historical question that's outside of my competency. I mean, yeah, if the whole Eastern Mediterranean became Christianized.
Yeah.
Right, and post Alexander the Great, a lot of that had been Hellenized before that. So, all the roads led to Rome, all the intellectual stuff led to Jesus. So I can't answer the deep cultural question for you.
Yeah.
Beyond just to say, yeah, I mean, it's actually in the Eastern Roman Empire that Christianity holds on even better than the West, in a lot of ways, and endures just fine. So I think it does seem like Greek culture partly paved the way for Christian culture to spread. Now, there's really triumphalist versions of that. There's really Hellenophile versions of that, and I wouldn't put myself fully in that camp. But I'd say, look, go look at the history yourself on that, and that's what I see.
What was Plato's system of morality? You talk about a good and an evil that he understood. Yeah. What did that look like for him?
Yeah. Well, all of us understand good and evil at one level, right? Because we're just human beings created by God. So until you're a full psychopath, fully mentally ill, right? You understand those concepts. So yeah, all right. So what did he think about it? Read my books. The longer answer, it's a short chapter, but the short version is, as I mentioned, his main target. There's a couple main targets. One is the hedonists who think life's about pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a target.
Yep.
We
got a good bit of that these days.
I have noticed that.
Yeah.
I have noticed that. That is a relevant argument, right? And for the hedonists too, right? Like when they get what they think they want, how satisfying do they find it?
Not really.
Not really, not very long.
Yeah.
Right? For a little while.
Yeah.
Right? When at first you wet the bed, it's warm, as James Joyce says. But then it gets cold. And that's how physical pleasures and temporal pleasures work, right? They're short.
Yeah.
They're short-lived. And so you have to come to grips with that there's no created good or created pleasure that can satisfy the heart of man. And this Augustine and others take this up hugely. So for Plato, what he does is he tries to stress that you have to find higher things that are more unchanging, that are more permanent and stable. And so move away from instability, move towards stability, and goodness, justice, moral virtue is really where he points us to. So goodness, wisdom, and justice. The ethical virtues, intellectual virtues, to use Aristotle's language, which the substance of it is already there in Plato. That's where he points us to, virtue and wisdom.
Lewis talks about a Tao. Is that similar, a similar concept?
Yeah, I would say he represents that in the West, the Tao in the West.
Yeah.
Identifying that really basic order, basic moral categories. There's a little section in the middle of Plato's Republic that it's hard not to see the Ten Commandments present right there. It's just, here's what you'll be like once you've achieved the basic virtues, right? You won't dishonor the gods. You won't steal money from temples. You'll obey your parents. You won't steal from anybody. You won't kill anybody. He literally is going through it just like that. That's what the virtuous man will be like.
That's funny.
And you're like, this is like 7 of the 10 commandments right here, almost right down to you shouldn't even make images of God because he doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. Like even that part.
Really?
God's spiritual for Plato.
Yeah.
He's not physical.
Interesting.
He's divine, spiritual, non-physical. Plato's a little more rationalistic about God than we would be in Christianity, but intellectual, not made of flesh and bones like we are.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of other earlier philosophers before Plato had already been arguing that, but he's explicit about it too. Right down to physical stuff's not divine.
Yeah.
He's there.
That makes sense of the materialism. It also sounds like he would have struggled a little bit with the concept of Jesus.
So that is definitely in the last chapter in my book. I talk about his theology a little bit.
Yeah.
And his soteriology, and that's definitely that would have been. We can hope it would have been just a revelation to him, and he would have embraced it. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it would have been extremely hard in his system.
Yeah.
He does believe that the spiritual and the physical interpenetrate, they interconnect. He uses the term participation, that the material participates in the spiritual. And so he does, when you have a human being that's matter and form, and it's a human form, so humanity is present in us, that eternal form is present here, not fully in the way that it is eternally, but it's present here temporally. He has that. So he knows there has to be some way to bring these two worlds together. They are connected. They've got to be connected. But he never really figures it out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see a way to do it, I think. And it's just so clear, he needs the incarnation. He needs God to be not just rational intelligence, but love.
Right.
Who's going to come to us. And that's what, if he saw it, was very much through a veil.
Which is unfortunate because you really,
Yeah.
That's a story God wrote, but it's hopefully we'll see Plato in heaven, but I doubt it.
We can hope. I mean, it doesn't seem like he heard the gospel, from the Jews or from the, he's too early for the New Testament era for the early church. So it would be a miraculous work of providence that we entrust, just like we do everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else who was not a Jew, right? We entrust to God's faithful justice.
Yeah. Did he believe that the material was inherently evil?
Maybe.
Okay.
maybe. He certainly does not have a high enough view of it, I would say, which is one of the main areas that Christianity has to force Platonism to change if it's going to survive.
Yep.
Because Genesis 1 is very clear about the goodness of creation, right? It's not a bad thing to have bodies. Bodies are excellent, right? They're very good. So God creates man, creates all these other things, creates the world, he creates matter, and it's all good and very good.
Mm-hmm.
And for Plato, that's not really clear that's the case. It seems like, you definitely don't have in Plato or in any other Greek the idea of creation ex nihilo, creation out of nothing. That's Christian doctrine, that when God creates the world, he creates it out of nothing. The only thing that exists originally is God.
Right.
And nothing outside of God.
Yeah.
And so everything else that comes to be through God's creative act. And it's not clear. Well, it's clear in Plato and others that's not the case for them. They don't think that's the case. And so they will typically have matter being eternal alongside of whatever divinities they have.
Mm-hmm.
And so materiality is eternal, I think, on Plato's account. And it exists originally in a kind of chaotic and unformed state.
Yep.
Which does parallel Genesis, right? Formless and void, this kind of thing. And so there is a kind of eternal chaos of some kind, original chaos, that Plato's God then goes to bring order out of. And so in the Plato's Timaeus, he says he goes and takes over all that is and organizes it.
Yep.
And imposes a kind of rational order and structure on it. And he goes through the Timaeus and talks about it. And that's how math gets imposed on it, right? You take all this chaotic stuff and you impress order on it. So now it's going to work harmoniously, mathematically, regularly. The planets being the biggest model of this, which is why astronomy comes in so big.
Yeah.
Right? The planets work very orderly, very systemically. Right? There's a regular day and night every day, and it happens because of how the planets move. Right? And so it's very sequential, very mathematical, very orderly. So the creator God takes over all that is visible and imposes this order on it. And then, the materiality, once it has order imposed on it, is better. And it's not nothing, and it's not just bad. It is worse.
Okay.
It's definitely worse than the spiritual for him. But whether it's just flat out evil, there are places he says that when he's at his, most dramatic, he'll say that. For all the other parts of the view, is it fully consistent? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It's clear that, he says again in the Timaeus, he says, why did God do this? He says God was good and wanted creation to be as good as possible, just like him. And that's what gets him going. And what is our mission here? He says our mission is to assist the gods in that noble work of making creation as good as possible.
Yeah.
Now, if that's all you have, then you have a kind of a mere humanism where all you can do is like make the world a better and better place. And you don't really have salvation, right? So that's by itself, it's not enough. And yet you look at Genesis 1 and 2, at what the original task was, there was work to do.
Right.
There was a world that was orderly, but not fully ordered. God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and that was the garden, but there was stuff outside the garden. And you know what it was? It was not garden.
Right.
And what were we supposed to do? We were supposed to make everything garden.
Right.
So God created the world organized, but with a lot of work to do that Adam was supposed to do. To bring forth all the latent potentialities in creation.
Yeah.
Which, again, in God's providential history, he's having us do that. Even when a lot of us try not to do it, he makes us do it anyway in his providential government. And so that's where I think there is a parallel there.
Yeah.
That Plato thinks that we have a work to do, which is to make things as good as possible, above all ourselves.
Yeah.
Like above all the human person, which is rational, is capable of knowing, capable of acting for the sake of what is good and beautiful and noble, and not just getting pushed along by instinct and appetite and things like the rest of creation. We're like really prominent part of nature for Plato, that we can do things other things can't. We can be noble and amazing in ways that other things can't. And that's what he thinks is the human task until you, if you've done it well, you get to go home to be with God and the other wise men and virtuous men of the past and talk about philosophy every day.
Hmm.
That's his idea of heaven. It's a disembodied spiritual activity.
I think Plato and I would disagree about the theory of heaven.
Yeah, and Christians did too, right?
Yes.
His heaven's disembodied, so it's not good enough.
Yeah.
The Christian heaven is not disembodied; it's embodied.
Yeah.
The end of the story in the end of the book of Genesis is not the earth disappearing, right? Yes, the elements dissolve, but then they get reformed.
Mm-hmm.
And the material world is recreated, renewed, restored, resurrected. And the dwelling place of God is finally with man. So the story at the end is God comes down and dwells with us. And he got it backwards, right? Like,
right.
But Plato knew in our corrupt state, we couldn't go up to God.
Yes.
Which is right. We can't. And he didn't have Jesus. He didn't have the law. He didn't have any of that. So how are you going to get redemption? How are you going to get God to dwell with man?
There's no way you would imagine.
But he knows God's too holy and eternal to come down like the way we are.
Yeah.
He's not coming down.
Right.
The only hope he could come up with is to purify ourselves so we can get up there to God.
Yeah.
Which doesn't work.
So close.
But like, what else are you going to try?
Right.
Like, that's what you have to try.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a thing to drive us back to Christ, right? Imagine trying to make yourself fit for heaven on your own abilities.
Man.
And that's what the Greeks, even at their best, that's what they hold out to you, is you have to become virtuous and holy so that you can dwell with God.
And the Christian theology flips it on its head and says you dwell with God and then you become virtuous and holy.
Yeah. Yeah. God comes to you.
Yes.
God comes to live in you, his spirit to dwell in you, and he makes you holy. Right. And then he dwells with us in part, and he makes us fit to dwell with him forever.
Yes.
Right? Fully. And then he builds us a house and he comes and lives in it with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And absolutely, like you would never imagine, without the gospel, without the books of the Old Testament, without knowing the story that we were once in a perfect state and then we fell, that the final state would be redemption, recreation of that perfect state. I mean, I understand Plato's fall here.
It's too good to be true.
Yeah.
It's like a fairy story. Like, that can't possibly be the way it could happen, right? And yet God tells us that's what he has done and is doing and will do.
Yeah.
So see, I'm making you a friend of Plato now too.
Yes. I think I have been for a while. This whole conversation, one of the things that it seems that he and other people like him were using as frameworks to view the universe was order and chaos.
Yeah.
And we see that, obviously that's seen throughout the world. China has the yin and the yang, and, moving it very close to us. That's kind of Jordan Peterson's big thing is you must create order out of the chaos.
Yeah.
Was that how he fundamentally understood the world, as those are the two agents that are fighting each other and we are meant to be agents of order in a world of chaos?
To a certain extent, yeah. I don't think he personified chaos.
Okay.
In that way. So I don't think chaos was like a person doing stuff.
Was it like the base state of reality?
Not reality. Of materiality, yes. But of reality, no.
There you go.
Because there's the eternal rational realm.
Mm-hmm.
That its base state is not chaos. It's the opposite, right? Its base state is complete order.
Yeah.
And the imperfect order down here is just because materiality's, what it is. You can't make the temporal eternal. So you have to just make the temporal as eternal as you can.
Yeah.
And that's what, the planets are. They're as stable as you can make it. I wouldn't personify it per se, but there's a kind of parallel there, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
With us needing to impose order onto disorder. Yeah, absolutely. Again, that's kind of echoes of Eden there, I think.
Yeah.
Again, as well.
In a sense, that's partly correct.
Yeah,
but also, like you look at creation, and a lot of it is chaotic, and also there's beauty in the
Yeah.
chaos, and God
Yeah.
really loves the chaos. And I don't know if this is true, but it sounds in part like what they were trying to accomplish was a world without chaos.
Yeah. If there's a danger of Platonism, it's definitely kind of on the rationalist side, where you could make it too orderly and it ends up boring.
Yeah.
That'd be no fun. And that if there's the ditch they're likely to drive into is that ditch, for sure. Plato himself had enough of the wild in him, I think, to avoid it.
Interesting.
For as long as we're in the body, we're going to have some of that chaos, he thinks. And then, with us recognizing, well, God made it, not bad, but he made it material. We can embrace more of that. I don't think chaos is the right word.
Yeah.
But irregularities,
Yeah.
eccentricities,
Yes.
fun, sharp corners, and and seeming randomness. If you just look at like the topography of mountains, right? They're not like they have a kind of order to it, but it's the order of like a painting, right? It's like a kind of harmony.
Yeah.
It's a lot of weird, different things that all like fit together really cool.
Yeah.
And it's got to be an order like that, that we want to have.
And there's a baseline reality of order that, like, mountains are built off the laws of the laws of gravity applies to mountains, which is why they're able to be mountains.
Yeah.
But then the chaos is like the I don't know, the pillows, the confetti on top.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the corruption of the order. Yeah, which is much clearer in Scripture.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have that clearly good creation, and then the fall, which renders creation more destroyed and damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, what was Plato's view of the cave, and kind of how did that influence his view of the rest of reality and theology, and how the world worked?
Okay. Yeah, the cave is a famous image, often called the allegory of the cave, that occurs roughly in the middle of Plato's Republic, which is a very large work dealing with a lot of these issues, actually, right down to the salvation story that happens at the end. And the cave is kind of an illustration for Plato of the process of intellectual and moral transformation and education that we go through. So you start out with this image of someone chained at the bottom of a cave, staring at a wall and watching shadows on the wall being cast by a light that's behind them that they can't see because they're chained facing this way. And the light is casting shadows over their head on the wall because it's hit behind them. The light has hit puppets or statues that people are carrying around under a low wall, like a puppet show, like the shadow of a puppet show behind you projected onto a theater screen, but it's just the black and white outlines of the shadows. And that's where the cave starts. And he says that's like where we all live most of the time, in a land of unreality, of images that are cheap copies and fake copies that other people are mostly manipulating. And he didn't even know about TikTok. And he said that. So most of us are just looking at images most of the time and shadows. We're paying attention to how do we get 15 more clicks on our social media page, and we're paying attention to how can I get a 3% raise next year, and we're paying attention to how do I make sure that person's not mad at me, and on, and it's just stuff like this. It's just not the big picture. It's not the serious stuff. And so you start locked that way in the temporal, the material, the physical, and the shadowy. And you have to go through an intellectual process and a moral process of having the chains taken off and moving more and more towards reality. So it's actually not clear how you could do the initial freeing act.
Yeah.
How do you get out of the chains? He just says, if someone were to take off the chains and turn you around, then you would start seeing things for what they are. You'd see the fire. The fire would look really bright because the light, of the fire looks really bright at first. And you'd slowly realize, wow, there's people carrying puppets and statues around, and that's what I've been watching. You realize that, but it's still bright, and you're like, it's comfortable, And he even says at that point, even once you realize that, you kind of want to just go back and just keep going back and looking at the images, right? It's just easier to just go watch Netflix again than deal with your real problems in life.
Yeah.
And he says, but if someone were to drag you up the stairs out of the cave and take you up to the world outside the cave,
Yeah.
boy, then you'd really be blinded, right? When you come out of the cave, it'd just be so bright, you'd just be blinded by the light. And then you would be out there finally dealing with the real objects, with the real mountains and the real trees and the real lake and the real birds and the real stars and the real moon and the real sun. And eventually you would come to see the sun itself, which is the source of all light and all life, all life and visibility to the things that exist. And the analogy there is to finally getting your mind out of just being immersed in the passing, fleeting things and on to the permanent things, the eternal things.
Right.
And when you start grasping those, which is not easy at all, then you start to make your recovery. And then you can achieve true knowledge, which enables you to live wisely and virtuously. And then you have this duty to go back into the cave to help your fellow prisoners who often don't want to be helped.
Yeah.
And so he's obviously sort of describing Socrates there in that situation of becoming a philosopher, trying to help the city of Athens become wise and virtuous.
And then they kill you.
And that's what happens in the cave. He goes back in, he tries to free them, and he says, if you try to do that, they would kill you.
Yeah.
And of course, that's ironic, describing Socrates, and kind of shows the real difficulty with any kind of moral transformation. For people who are stuck in their ways don't want to leave, and the people who have money and power on the line, if those people were to leave, really don't want you to do that.
Right.
And there's that dynamic obviously has played itself out in human history across the board. That's why prophets aren't liked, right?
Yep.
Pastors are often vulnerable as a result of this. And, Plato and other philosophers would say real philosophers should get themselves in trouble like that. That's one good thing you can say about Jordan Peterson in this regard, right?
Yes.
He got himself in trouble in the right kind of ways.
He did.
And when you're really committed to truth, it's difficult to avoid that. Socrates said, I had to stay out of public life altogether, and that's the only way I made it to 80, and I wouldn't have made it there otherwso.
Yeah.
If I had tried to be a city councilman from day one, you would have lynched me a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so we can debate about the prudence of different things, but if you're not getting in trouble once in a while with the regime, then are you really prophetic?
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, so it's difficult. It's sort of the outside inside, and there's a long story here, but that can play into a kind of pietism where we should never be in government or something.
Right.
That's not the point. The point's more that if you think that man has fallen in sin, then you think that in our corrupted state, we're going to be hostile to these truths, both natural and redemptive. And so that's what Plato finds himself describing.
How identifiable were the characters as I think about the whole story? Who are the people with the puppets on the wall? Are they people who have been outside the cave first to create the statues that look like the real things? A lot of these questions, but it may have just been more of an analogy than, then this is who this is.
All analogies break down, so it breaks down somewhere. I think for Plato, he doesn't think that those people have been out of the cave.
Okay, interesting.
He thinks they're still corrupted. And which is why they don't even know the right way to carry around the statues, for one. Because they don't know the real thing, right? It's like if you're doing a puppet show about giraffes, but you don't know what giraffes do, you're going to do it all wrong.
Yeah.
You're just going to do it to make the kids happy,
right?
Not to actually do a giraffe thing.
Right.
So that's kind of an illustration of how he doesn't think they've been outside the cave. What he does think they're interested in is power and pleasure.
Okay.
And so they're going to move those things around to maintain power and pleasure for themselves. And he's highly critical of the elite Greeks, politically active elite Greeks, for doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Governing the cities to enrich their own pockets and to keep their own power, and not for the good of the people, not for the good of the whole body.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean he's a radical egalitarian. He's totally not. But there's still a difference between fleecing people and actually governing for the common good. And he insists if it's justice, it's proper, proportionality, right?
Yeah.
Study the geometry. What's proportional?
Right.
That's not proportional, right? Taking everything for yourself, not proportional at all. And so, yeah, so you see that. So I think it may be different that way from maybe some more modern views, which say, they got outside the cave, they've seen the truth, and now they're just deceiving people.
Yeah.
It's more like they're also deceived themselves. I think.
Is this deceived by, is this like an infinite regress of caves, or what are they deceived into?
Which people, the prisoners or the prison guard
The prison
guys?
guard, the puppeteers.
Oh, well, they're stuck. They're stuck in the fake stuff as well, right? So, I mean, all they have are statues and puppets.
Yeah,
They think
and they think those are
they
real.
think they have a little popsicle stick with a cardboard cutout of the sun, and they think it's the sun.
Got it.
And they're like really good at moving the sun around every day.
Yeah, and they think they control the world.
Yeah, because those people down there listen to them.
Interesting.
And cook their steak for them. Right.
It almost seems that the ability to have self-identity and self-control, and to is the path to removing yourself from the chains. And some people are able to do that by hard work and mastery of a field in such a way that they become very powerful and can then loose themselves from the chains. And other people do it by starting to ask these questions and starting to almost detach from the chains as a byproduct, an accidental byproduct. And then because of their inherent virtue, because they weren't doing it in the search of power, but merely in the search of truth, they are enabled to see the ladder out of the cave as opposed to merely becoming one of the puppeteers.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's when you think about all the different kinds of people out there, all the different kind of ways that things happen in the world, I do think it can happen a lot of different ways. There's obviously there's more corrupt people, less corrupt people. Yeah, I think about some of my own relatives who are Christians and kind of how they came to the faith, and it's different stories.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you have like the worst of sinners, and then they hear Billy Graham crusade message, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, that's me." Ah, right. Like complete 180. Like sometimes it's like that. Other times it's much more modest, and sort of outwardly more modest, and it can very much be something where God's providentially orchestrated a lot of things in their life, and they are pursuing the truth, and they're going to find Him.
Yeah,
because God's doing that
right.
work, and they're ready to run into, Keith Darrell on a campus or someone somewhere, and to hear about Jesus. So that's like a big picture. Yeah, I think it happens a lot of ways. God works in the heart a lot of different ways, and yeah, I think that's totally true.
I mean, famously, C.S. Lewis was kind of convinced by a logical argument into believing God, which and it wasn't like God was like, well, that's slightly disappointing for me. That was just another avenue to heaven.
God is far craftier than we are.
Yes.
Right. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows every possible lever everywhere. So he's working in all kinds of ways that we barely have any glimpse of at all. So yeah.
As far as Plato's Plato's cave and how that actually influenced his thinking about how society should exist, how how the world should function. Was he in favor of dethroning the puppeteers, and was he concerned that would destroy people's reality and kind of destroy their sense of being and turn everything into anarchy? Or was he in favor of, you have to have some sort of puppeteer system, but let's at least have the puppeteers be people like myself who know that this is the fake thing and know how the real thing, know how a giraffe operates?
Right. Oh boy, that's a big question. Yeah. So, yeah, he's obviously a Christian nationalist. That would be the obvious. No. If you have Jordan Dorney, who teaches history here at New St. Andrews College, on, he would probably give you a more nuanced and subtle and careful answer. So two things that operate as I think about this. One, Plato is radically committed to the truth and to truth telling. And I think, at the end of the day, truth is a paramount virtue for him. And so it's very hard for me to countenance political regimes whose structure is to systematically deceive large portions of the population.
Right.
Which is the system that he describes in the Republic.
Yeah.
Now, it is not the system he describes in the Laws, probably, which is a later political work that he writes after the Republic. I call the Laws the Republic 2.0. It covers some of the same ground, but it sort of lays out a different ideal city. And, there's a lot of nuance to it. Are they telling the citizens everything in that city? Maybe not. Are they still inventing a few stories there? Maybe, yeah, probably. But much less than the Republic, which imagines a kind of very systematic deception of a large portion of the population, which grates me every time, but it's definitely part of the argument. The flip side of that is, I think Plato does want to soberly ask this question, which in a nation like ours, which has been Christian for so long, is difficult to ask, which is, are there portions of the population that are incapable of self-government on the basis of truth?
Yes.
And, I don't know. I don't want to go there, but yet, I want to keep telling the truth for as long as I can without that. But, he thought yes, in ancient Greece, yes. And so you kind of confine a substantial portion of the population, as if they were children, like politically, and not capable of full political participation, free and open debate, in public forums and assemblies to rationally deliberate about the good and noble, which is what you have to do in a political community. Is you have to argue about what's noble and beautiful and good and bad and right and wrong, so that we make decisions about that together based on our shared understanding of that. If you don't have that, you don't have a city.
Right. You don't have a republic.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to be able to do that. And so if you decide, well, we're actually just going to lie to a lot of people, like, here's the truth, and we're just not going to tell them.
Yeah.
And you give the reason because they can't handle the truth.
Right.
They are like sick patients that you need to just trick into taking their medicine. He actually uses this illustration.
Oh, interesting.
They're like sick patients that if you just tell them, look, you have to do these exercises and then your knee will get better, they won't do it.
Right.
So you have to find a way to trick them into doing it, and then they'll be better, and then maybe they'll thank you. Down the road. Or maybe they just won't kill each other or kill you, and then they'll die.
Yeah, it's like you put peanut butter around the dog pill.
Yeah, exactly. So it's essentially treating them that way. And so if you just read the Republic at surface level, he's recommending that. I don't think that sits well with his broader view, about the importance of truth-telling. And I don't think it fits anthropologically with the view that every human being has a rational soul, which Plato's committed to. He doesn't say image of God, but he thinks if you're human, you have reason. And he says this about the Greeks and the barbarians. The barbarians are human. They have reason. Even if they are not very good at letting reason rule, they have it. And so that's the trouble, right? So is there some, like, do you have to, and this is like a parenting question too. Do you lie to your kids about stuff to get them to do stuff?
Right.
I don't like doing that either. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I'd rather just say, because I say so.
Yeah.
And then in 10 years later, you'd be like, oh, that's why he said so.
Yeah.
Now I get it, right?
Right.
You don't do that all the time, but like with the 3-year-old, you absolutely do that. They're not going to deliberate about the good, true, and beautiful and come to appreciate the force of your reasoning, why they shouldn't have another bowl of ice cream tonight.
Right.
And why that's bad for them. And, and why they need to cultivate temperance and self-control. And if they do that, they'll have a happy life.
And they're like, Dad, but you don't understand. I want more ice cream.
You don't understand how good this tastes.
Yeah, right.
Like, it tastes so good. Like I should have more of this. That's what you do with 4-year-olds, right? You don't lie to them and say, like, there's a boogeyman that's going to come eat you.
Right.
So that's why I think that part of Plato just doesn't sit well at the surface level. And I think he didn't, I don't really think he intended that seriously. I don't think he could mean that. But if other interpreters think he did, that's an argument that we could have. But that's where it bears on it today. Like, we live in a constitutional republic where every adult over the age of 18 is a citizen who has political power as a voter and is responsible to deliberate and pursue what is true and good and beautiful, so that we can all live a harmonious life together.
Yeah.
And if we get away from that point, we are going to have a different country.
We are.
It's going to be a change of regime. And some people think obviously that's already happened. I'm the naive philosopher, so I'll just say we should keep making that argument that we expect you to be reasonable and responsible. But even the naive philosopher has to admit that there's going to come a breaking point to that.
Yeah.
And we're recording this at a certain time and place, and we're recording this right after, for instance, this last weekend, a group of progressive radicals interrupted a Baptist worship service in Minneapolis.
Yep.
It interrupted the worship of God on Sunday morning in a public assembly in the United States of America over a political point. And, at that point, if that's the kind of thing we're going to do to each other, we don't have a country anymore. We have civil war. And that would be a horrible, if I hope that's not where we're actually at. That'd be a horrible thing. And if we're going to not do that, we have to have one, free debate.
Yeah.
And two, we have to have national repentance.
That
right? We have strayed. Yes. We have strayed from the thing upon which we were founded. We have strayed from the thing, which is the only thing by which public morality can be upheld, and that is the Christian truth in Jesus. The founders of our country thought this, right? That our Constitution is only fit for a moral people, and that morality is maintained by piety. And so if we have lost piety as a people, and the surveys say we're losing it, that suggests we'll lose morality, and therefore we will no longer be fit for our Constitution, and we will have regime change.
Yeah.
And that's not a world I want to live in, but it's a world that we might all be living in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And we can hope for revival so that doesn't happen. And if it takes Gen Z men to do it, okay, that's what it's going to take to do it. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Bring it on.
Yeah, that's the hope, actually.
Yes.
At this point. So we'll see. There's a lot of work going on.
There is.
Right? And if you look around the world, there's nowhere else you're going to go and somehow be in a better place. So
right.
We may as well stay here and tell people about Jesus and, get ready for whatever's coming. So
yeah, I was talking to a pastor, and he was mentioning how he had a family who came to him during COVID, and they were like, yeah, I just don't know that this place is, I don't know this is the right place. Like the church is kind of, melting on this. And he was like, look, you're gonna, like, wherever you go, you're gonna have to fight. Yep. So might as well go where you like the people, where you you trust them, and where you believe that there's actually some good that can be done.
Absolutely.
And then fight there, because you're gonna have to fight. Like, welcome to God's world.
You've got to build. Yeah. You've got to build and fight. There's nowhere outside of the U.S. that you're likely to be able to do that better than you can here. And I'm a typical American where I've moved around a lot, but I don't really recommend that for most people. I think everyone has a history where they are, and if there's some reasonable thing going on where you are, build.
Yeah.
And build with the promise of God.
Yeah.
There's a clear promise in Scripture, not for the United States of America, but for the church, that the gates of hell will not prevail. So wherever you are, be part of advancing the kingdom of God forward.
Yeah.
And I hope that involves the U.S. for a long time, because I grew up here. This is the country I'm a citizen in. And, for many of us, we've been here a long time, and I would expect the Germans to feel the same way about Germany.
Yeah.
And I would expect the Brits especially to feel the same way about Britain, which has got such a long national history.
Yes.
And, but even the pagan countries, you should just pray that they endure and become Christian.
Right.
And so I think that is the starting point. And you only go into exile if necessity forces you to. And obviously for some people, even in the U.S., I think necessity forces them at various times to do that. And I'll be the first to say I'm hypocritical on this, because I've moved voluntarily for all kinds of reasons. And obviously with automobiles and airplanes, you can stay connected and FaceTime and all this stuff. You can stay connected more than you used to, and you should definitely do that. But like, there is something too. I always love it when I see some state senator in Minnesota who's running for state senate, who's 50 years old, and he's like, I'm a 7th generation farmer from Minnesota. I'm like,
I trust you.
Like, that guy, that should be more the norm. That should be more the norm.
Yeah.
And Again, can you do that everywhere in the country? No, but can you do that in a lot of places? Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely can. And, I have a belief that we're humans are like trees.
Mm.
We're meant to be planted.
Yeah.
And, you're not always in the
Yeah.
place right now
Yeah.
where you should be planted, but you
Yeah.
are, Psalm 1 says, planted by streams of
Yeah.
living water. That's kind of the ideal. So
Yeah.
get to that point,
Yeah.
as God enables you to.
Yeah.
As far as I'll just throw this out there. As far as, are we still living in a republic? Are people still worthy, able to govern themselves and thus worthy of a republic? I think a lot of people have lost that, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's necessarily because they never had it. I think it's partly their upbringing and the fact that,
Yeah.
their parents never taught them this. Their parents never taught them the value of self-governance.
Yeah.
Their school didn't teach them the value of self-governance and
Yeah.
self-education. And then they have become radicalized by removing themselves from the world through various means.
Yeah.
And so we're now dealing with situations where people think it entirely reasonable and, in fact, good that Charlie Kirk was killed.
Right.
And that should be an indication that we have lost a severe amount of our rationality.
Yeah.
That a human dies and a large subset of the United States says, "Hey, this is a better day than it was going to be."
Right. Yeah.
So does that? Is that a full argument for people not being worthy of the title of self-governance or the responsibility and duty of self-governance? I don't think so yet, and I don't know how we would implement that. Right? It's not like I can be like, at the voting booth, I saw your Twitter. You're clearly not intelligent. But we have lost our alignment to and obedience to the truth. And so now we're dealing with a bunch of people who don't want to hear any truth.
Yeah.
And most certainly don't want the truth in their own lives. And that actually does have ramifications for how our country's run.
Yeah. I think, disenfranchising felons, maybe we should talk about other categories like, people who've been declared mentally insane and some other things like that.
Yeah.
I think we have a starting point. Obviously, things like immigration enforcement are relevant here as well. But since the beginning, we've had universal male suffrage in this country, a couple hundred years of that regime. And, revolutions are not without substantial risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the Protestant political tradition, as well as the classical tradition as a whole, broadly encourages you to put up with difficulties as long as possible.
Yeah.
Because when you knock that wall over, it is very hard to anticipate what's coming next.
Yeah.
And so that would be my a caution to Gen Z men. It'd be better to double down on trying to rebuild the original America than to just say, no, it's time for a police state or something silly like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't go there. Like just try to rebuild original America, without the slavery.
Yeah.
Right. And because that was truly awful. And we've paid for hundreds of years for that. Right.
Yes.
It's a horrible idea to decide to steal men and to enslave them. So that national stain, hopefully we're close to having purged out. But to go back to the original regime without that is a much more reasonable strategy.
Yeah.
And I would say the encouraging thing I would say for the Gen Z guys, which I'm assuming is a substantial portion of your audience, though I don't know the demographics, is you're kind of coming of age at a time because of Trump, with all his greatnesses and weaknesses. You're coming of age where hopefully you realize that it is possible to do things politically.
Yes.
And that the way, exactly how it's happened for the last 30 years is not exactly how it has to happen for the next 30.
Right.
That's different from revolution.
Right.
And so that was my caution. But the way, especially the second Trump administration at the federal level, has been aggressive in using not outside their powers, but using the full extent of their powers, constitutional powers established by our way of organizing ourselves, to use that effectively, and to try to change the course of things for the next 30 years back towards a more healthy and original or American order. And yes, we can talk about what ails us as a nation. There's the disorder in our people, and the various causes of that. That's a big part of it. we do have a kind of elite that is corrupt. It's very obvious. We have a kind of bureaucratic elite that is corrupt, and there's a whole story on that, on how Marxism emerges in the 1800s, early American progressivism emerges in our country, this attempt at rational control and bureaucratic expertise, rational control, totally contrary to the classical political tradition, contrary to the Christian tradition, manifestation of kind of modern ideology, and using the tools, the constitutional powers, to try to peel back that bureaucratic state, and where it can't be peeled back, to utilize it with actual moral people. That is an agenda that I hope Gen Z continues to aggressively pursue.
Yeah.
I hope that the boomers and the Gen Xers who are currently wielding the most power are able to help facilitate that for the next generation.
Yeah.
And look, there are signs of
Signs of life.
Signs of life, absolutely. Reason for optimism.
Much reason for optimism. I feel confident in my generation, not in our innate ability, but in God's providence, and some of the things that I'm seeing already. As far as what you're saying, we absolutely need reformation, but reformation doesn't. Sometimes people hear reformation, they think, oh, you're just gonna sit around and do nothing until you're dead. But reformation is a very active work, so. Yeah, lots of work to be done, but the answer to anarchy is not a different kind of anarchy.
Right.
It's an actual system.
Right.
So,
definitely.
Where can people, if as they're thinking about how this conversation and how Plato influences the West, and this the conversation about politics and republic and all of that, where should people go? What can they expect and learn more?
Yeah. You should enroll at New St. Andrews College and send all your friends. That would be one way to do it. You can follow my Twitter account, Talcott NYC, because I used to teach at the King's College in New York City for a long time. You can follow me there. And then there's a lot of other really good resources out there. I would say first thing on my bookmark list would be American Reformer website, which continually puts out great current content on the Protestant political tradition and its prospects for today, and not in a mere theory way, but in a way of actual practice. That'd be one thing. And if you're a young person who wants to be part of this but doesn't know how, I'd encourage them to reach out to me, because there's a lot of opportunities for this in our current moment, especially people with solid Christian classical education who are not weird elitists but are humble and real people. As well. There's a lot of opportunity, and if you don't know what to do with that, reach out to us at NSA, and we'll try to help you with that. Yeah,
and as far as how Plato influences, thinking about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, my book's the easiest starting point for that, and then from there, there's a whole tradition of classical and American political philosophy. You could look at some of the, again, in addition to the material on our website, nsa.edu. The material on the Hillsdale College website is quite good. Their free courses that they put up are quite good. A couple good ones there to check out. Not as Protestant as it should be, but we'll work on that. But it's a real cottage, and it's a small cottage industry of people talking about Plato in this current moment. It's usually sort of trad conservative political philosophers who are out there mucking around in different places, like the Claremont Institute and some other little organizations like that. But it'd
be wonderful if there were more Christians who were paying attention to this and actually studying and engaging in philosophy. I don't know why Christians are not doing that as often.
Yeah. Well, it happens in some places and to some degrees. Different subfields in philosophy are a little different. But again, on the political side, I would say I think actually American Reformers putting out the best consistently classical Protestant material on this. And the classical Protestants are kind of the pinnacle of the medieval tradition that is fully Christian. It's trying to make everything fully Christian, and taking the best of the classical West to do that with. And the Protestants are doing that from the very beginning. Of the Reformation. They're trying to preserve the church as it was and ought to be, to continue the great things that were there and to reform the places where it was corrupted.
Yeah.
So, and I think Amref does a great job of that.
Yeah. It sounds like if we are going to reform this country, we are going to need a robust and theologically correct philosophy.
I think so in the long term, absolutely. And hopefully we can have a coalition of co-belligerents for a while.
Yes.
That can keep us going. But that's obviously the hope. As Plato put it, we need to have the kings become philosophers or the philosophers become kings. And now we can say, the kings become sound theologically and sound practically as well.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yep.
Would you mind showing people your book?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
There you go. Plato.
Yep.
You can where can people buy that?
Everywhere great books are sold. The PNR website, Presbyterian and Reformed Publishing.
Wonderful.
You can get it from them, and then it's widely available everywhere.
I will put links in the description.
Great.
Dr. David Talcott, thank you so much.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. See you guys.